McQuestion for over 28 years talking about things that matter with people who care. Production of McQuestion is made possible in part by individual viewers, supporters of the Foundation for Responsible Television, the Hatton W. Sumners Foundation, helping to educate the public about the fundamental principles of their democracy and thus be in a position to help formulate public policy. Moss Adams LLP, certified public accountants and consultants, providing industry-smart tax, assurance, and consulting solutions to help businesses and their owners succeed since 1913. The University of Texas at Dallas, creating the future.
A recent book by Graham Allison is entitled Destined for War, Can America and China Escape Thucydides' Trap? We'll answer that question and we'll tell you what Thucydides' Trap is, plus much more on this provocative program about the future of Chinese and American relationships. To begin, let's meet our guest joining via phone, Cynthia Watson. Cynthia is Professor of Security at the National War College. She served for 5 years as Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, then Associate Dean for Curriculum and Faculty Development. Her current research interests include China-Taiwan in Latin America and China's security concerns and its New World posture. Welcome back to our program, Cynthia.
Thank you, Dennis.
And here in the studio, starting on my left, Dennis Kratz is the Ignash and Salina Rockover Professor of Humanities and the Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities at the University of Texas at Dallas. Welcome back to the program, Dennis.
Thanks, Dennis. It's good to be here.
Thank you. And sitting next to you is Daxuan Feng, trained as a theoretical physicist and formerly served as Vice President of Research at the University of Texas at Dallas and Chief Advisor to the China Silk I-Valley Research Institute in China, one of the leading think tanks, I might point out. And he is widely published and lectures all over the world on these sort of subjects. So, Daxuan, let me just ask you a very simple question. Will China and the United States, will they avoid war, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. And why do you say that?
They will avoid war. Because China and U.S. are not blood enemies. I don't know how many people here know that the greatest university in China at the moment is called Tsinghua University. That came from the funding during the Boxer Rebellion, where the money of the 8 countries China gave back to 8 countries of money. Only United States used the money to build universities in China. The other all took the money and ran.
Really? Good.
Secondly, the best Chinese medical university at the moment is called Union Medical College. It was funded in the early 20th century by Rockefeller Foundation. United States is not viewed as an enemy deep down in the Chinese people. And I also think that it's not viewed deep down in the American people that China is an enemy.
But how about high up in the Chinese Communist Party and high up in Washington, D.C.?
Well, Washington, D.C., you have to read the Twitters. In China, I think the general idea about United States is that, as was mentioned earlier in the other show, that there is a sense that United States is trying to contain China. I give you an example. This is a quick answer. There was a committee of 100 very distinguished Chinese formed this thing called the Committee of 100. And there was a meeting in Washington, D.C., where there's a Chinese military person and the person from the U.S. Pentagon. And the Pentagon people were asking the Chinese, you should be less uptight about us. And the Chinese say, you are in Korea, you're in Uzbekistan, you're in just about everywhere, you're in
Japan.
South Korea.
Right.
Who should be uptight?
Exactly, okay.
And so I think that the other thing that is very important, U.S. has about 6,000 nuclear missiles at the intercontinental. China has about 200. You know, only one needs to get through to destroy humanity. Only one.
Well, was
So
that-
war should not be even on the table for discussion.
Good. With that pleasant thought, Cynthia, will the United
Yes.
States and China avoid war in your estimation?
Well, I have to start by giving a disclaimer, Dennis, that this is purely my own analysis, not in any way and should not be interpreted as U.S. government policy. I think that both countries are aware of the danger that exists. I personally do not find the Thucydides trap to be a convincing argument because I don't believe there's anything inevitable about behavior of nation states. I will say, however, that I don't entirely agree with your first guest because I think that there are strong beliefs, particularly in China right now, and I think your guest just expressed it very clearly, that the United States seeks to keep China down. Whatever one wants to say about the bilateral relationship, one thing we can be absolutely certain about, China has not fought a war. China has not really gone through a period of great frustration the way the United States has arguably over the last 17 years. And I'm afraid that what I hear when I'm in China these days is what is bordering on hubris about China's major, absolutely undeniable successes as it has transformed its society over the last 40 years. But that may lead to a sense of China having certain entitlements, China having certain rights that aren't necessarily fulfilled because of the century of humiliation and lots of other reasons we can talk about. But that sense of nationalism that we see growing in China, I do find to be a bit troubling because I don't see what's tempering it. I think the party leadership understands, but I think that there are other forces, particularly young people who've never seen anything except an extremely successful economic China over the last 40 years. And that may be something that is difficult to tame by the party leadership.
Okay. Now, I'm going to put up graphic 28, and Dennis, I'm going to ask you to read this first of all, and then tell us as much as you would like about it and sort of give us some other historical perspective.
Okay. As China challenges America's predominance, misunderstandings about each other's actions and intentions could lead them into a deadly trap first identified by the ancient Greek historian Thucydides. As he explained, it was the rise of Athens and the fear that this instilled in Sparta that made war inevitable. The past 500 years have seen 16 cases in which a rising power threatened to displace a ruling one. 12 of those ended in war.
Okay, good. So Graham Allison, who wrote that book, Destined for War, Can America and China Escape Thucydides Trap? So tell us about why. I mean, you're the humanities guy. Go back and give us some historical perspective here.
Well, first, my own disclaimer.